Welcome to episode 30 of the G5 Hive, where we aim to bring you all the honey in G5 college football. I am your host, Justice. I am joined with my co-host, Luke. How you doing tonight, Luke?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I am doing well. Super pumped. We just released episode 2 of the Worker Bee series last Friday with the Liberty Flames. Thanks to John for joining us. Lots of good information we got from John and Brian too from Hawaii. Man, both of those episodes, you know, lots of information went really well. We've got lots in the works. About
It's
a little more than half, I guess, right,
yeah,
of the G5 teams. We've kind of got some people lined up for. There will not be a new episode released this Friday, but we are recording one this week. So that episode will be released, would you say the 29th? That's the following
yeah,
Friday?
yep. The 29th would be the following
So,
Friday.
so, so look for that episode on the 29th. And then, uh, and then like we were just talking, which took us so long to kind of get started tonight. April is going to be super busy, right? Especially the mid end of April and all of May, with all the teams kind of wrapping up their practices, and so it's very possible that we won't be doing the normal show. We'll just be doing those interviews and releasing those, multiple a week probably, just because there's just going to be so many that we have to get done, and we won't really have a lot of time to kind of do the show too.
Yeah, because there's a lot that goes into prepping for these interviews and giving these beat reporters, all of what we can to be, have it be the best interview for them and the experience, I guess, for them and for you, the viewers and listeners. So, yeah, we sometimes then we don't have the time to put in for like our show sheet for our Monday night. But yeah, April, May, June, like we might not have a live show for a while this summer, but it will all be coming out really good content through the Worker Bee series. And I would ask if anybody has any particular questions or teams that they're really interested about, feel free to DM us. And, um, most of the interviews will be pretty similar. But if there's something in particular you want to know, or a freshman or something, let us know, and we can ask the question.
Yeah. One thing I didn't really realize, like, I've kind of, now that we had 2 episodes under the belt, we both kind of been pounding the streets, so to speak, trying to line other folks up. And now that we have a product that we can say, hey, here's examples, right? This is what we're doing. Um, it's so much easier to talk about it when you can share the work versus share an idea or a thought, right? So we're able
Yep.
to share a finished product. But one thing I didn't realize until started trying to figure out, well, who should we look at, who should we contact, like the Mac, man, the Mac's rough.
It
Like compare,
is. It
like
is. It is. They are students.
yeah, I mean compared to the other G5 conferences and coverage, like it's no joke. Like the Mac just, I mean, it's not to say that the other ones there's a lot of coverage, but the MAC is definitely, like, I feel like of all the conferences, the hardest one to kind of find somebody to bring on the show. Like you said, in a lot of cases, we're going to the student newspapers and asking, looking to say, okay, who's covering the sports, who covered football in the fall, and trying to get in touch with those folks and see if they'd be interested in coming. Just because there isn't, there isn't a mainstream media in terms of like a newspaper or even like a diehard fan podcast or a diehard fan blog. Those things just, for whatever reason, in the MAC, they just aren't as plentiful as they are with a lot of the other G5 teams. So the MAC's
Yep.
definitely, I feel like, the hardest one.
Absolutely.
And I,
Seems like and then going through like because I started a little bit before you started helping me. The Mountain West was kind of the easiest, I feel like, to get people on board. And yeah, That would be what I'd say. The easiest, probably the Mountain West, and hardest is definitely the MAC.
And then the other challenge is not being verified on Twitter, right? Uh, you can't DM hardly anybody if you're not verified. If they're not following you and you're not following them, um, you can't really DM them. And so they just, we don't make any money on this. Maybe one day we will, and we can afford the $16 a month. Um, but yeah, that's also made it, and that's added another level of difficulty that I would say I initially never even thought about, right? Because we're having to follow them, hope they follow us back, or either we're tweeting at them to ask, hey, you interested? Those kinds of things. If we can't find email addresses or whatever, so yeah, those it's been a challenge, but it's been fun for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully give you guys lots more good tidbits that you guys can use in draft season, and during the regular season for whatever your betting needs, or whatever you just follow a team in the G5 that you really want to know about.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, like we've said before, I just feel like there's so much information in these episodes, and it's not just for fantasy football. It's just, to me, I enjoy just from broadening my knowledge about a team. Right? We talk offense, we talk defense, we talk coaching changes, we talk recruiting. We're really trying to learn more about this team as much as we can and share that with everybody. So it just great general football knowledge to have. I feel like, right? Certainly, there's some asked questions are more geared towards certain aspects or whatnot, but yeah, just getting to know these teams more and kind of getting the information about the G5 teams out there is kind of the ultimate goal, I guess.
Yes, absolutely.
Speaking about news, so we do have quite a bit of news for you this week. Spring practice has started. We'll start off with Florida International. Running back Lexington Joseph is back. He tore his ACL last spring. He missed all of the 23-24 season. He is currently wearing a non-contact jersey in spring practice, but he does plan to be a full participant later this spring. So he will join that stable of running backs there with Shamari Lawrence and Kajan Owens. Kind of be interesting to kind of see, like, is it more of a committee, or will one of them kind of step up and take the reins of that room? While we're talking about Florida International, I read an article in their wide receiver room and saw an interesting tidbit. Obviously Dean Patterson returns. He's the top leading returner from last year. But there was also a lot of positive praise for redshirt freshman Luby Maurice Jr. He's 6 foot, 188 pounds. And Florida Nationals had a good history of wide receiver production, of wide receiver one production. Their wide receiver one, last year with Chris Mitchell, who went to transfer to Notre Dame. And then I'm trying to think the kid the year before that went to Maryland. Oh gosh. Oh man. I can't think of his name off the top of my head.
I'll look in it. I'll look at it.
He went in the portal. He went in the portal twice, and he ended up at Maryland last year. Didn't do much at Maryland, but he was he was a great asset for Florida National. But the point is that they have a good history of feeding their wide receiver one, right? And so maybe that's Dean Patterson, the top returning, or this redshirt freshman that's gotten a lot of praise in Maurice Jr. So just kind of something to kind of pay attention to there for Florida International. Also, Keon Jenkins, the quarterback, he gained about 12 pounds, so he's bulked up a little bit. Increasing his strength, all those things. And so maybe he's set to have a bigger year this year. Moving on to Tulsa, head coach Kevin Wilson recently mentioned that quarterback Cardell Williams underwent a cleanup procedure on his shoulder, and he is expected to miss the majority of spring practice. He missed the last few weeks of the 23-24 season. due to the shoulder issue. I think it was around week 10 or so. He was out from that point on. So, he's someone that kind of have high hopes for, right? Braylon Braxton's gone. Like to see Williams kind of take that next step and kind of take over that quarterback role, but unfortunately, missing the spring, which is not going to be great.
I know last year in talking to beat reporters last year during the season, they definitely really liked what Cardell Williams' potential is. Also, Tyrese Chambers is
Yes,
the
that's
name
who it
you were
was.
looking for.
Yep, Tyrese Chambers, absolutely. I listened to or I read an article or actually, I listened to a podcast today where they were talking to Western Kentucky head coach Tyson Helton, talked to him about spring practice and specifically the quarterbacks. And he didn't really give too much information. He just said it's going to be a quarterback battle between T.J. Finley, Caden Veltkamp, and Turner Helton. He went on to talk about how he was excited to bring T.J. Finley in, that he's going to bring the competition to the room. He was excited about Veltkamp's bowl performance, and he's interested to see if Veltkamp can kind of keep that momentum going into the spring. He didn't really say too much about Turner Helton.
So, Justice, So TJ Finley is vying for the tight end position. Is that what this is? Caden Veltkamp, great next tight end at Western Kentucky. Is that
Yeah, right.
what we're talking about here?
Because that's what they told him at the end of last year, right? They said, well, they wanted to transition him to tight end. He entered the portal. They go to the bowl game, and I was at the bowl game, so I got to see it firsthand. Turner Helton got the start, and he looked awful, man. If they had stuck with Helton, the Old Dominion would have won that game. There's no doubt in my mind, like what would have happened. Helton did not look good at all. They replaced him with Veltkamp, even though Veltkamp at that point was still in the portal. And, the rest is history. Veltkamp threw for, 400 yards, 5 touchdowns, something like that. Brought
I
them
just
back.
hope Veltkamp can get tight end eligibility in fan tracks. That's what I want. I'll be, hey, we need this. Pound the table. You said he's a tight end. I don't care that he's a quarterback. It would be the ultimate cheat code.
Yeah. I don't think that's going to happen. But yeah, so basically what I took from it was it's really a battle between Veltkamp and Finley, and definitely something to kind of pay attention to this spring. I listened to a interview on Hawaii. It was it wasn't Brian McInnes. It was someone else that covers Hawaii. And really the only takeaway from there, I think, which we kind of already knew, he talked about who he expected the starting receivers to be. And that was Pofele Ashlock and Kwali Nishigaya at the slot, and Stephen McBride and Jonah Pinoke on the outside. I think that's kind of those were the starters at the end of last year. Those are kind of the guys, probably at least in the beginning. But pay attention to Alex Perry, right? That was a guy that Brian McInnes really liked. Freshman last year, kind of had a good season last year, and I think they look for some great things from him in his sophomore season. Moving on to North Texas, running back Zach Evans, the transfer from Minnesota, he is in for spring practice, but quarterback Chandler Morris is not. But according to the head coach there, he is still expecting Chandler to come to North Texas. So not great news in terms of Morris isn't there for spring practice, but certainly the expectation is that he will be at North Texas. Some Fresno State news. Still early in spring practice for them, but it looks like Jalen Moss is moving to the slot, and then Mac Delina and Josiah Freeman are the receivers on the outside. Last year, Moss was mostly on the outside. He played some slot, and then Brooks was mostly the slot guy last season, but he has moved on. So great news for Jalen Moss and his stock rising coming into a sophomore year.
Yeah, because at Fresno State offense, you definitely want that slot guy. I think Moreno Cropper was there, like you said. Eric
Brooks.
Brooks was there, so that's what you want.
Moving on to San Diego State, that they've I found some practice notes from their first couple of practices. I haven't found anything from this week yet. They started practice last week, but quarterback AJ Duffy, the transfer from Florida State, is taking first team reps in spring practice. When they asked Sean Lewis, "What does that mean?" He just basically said, "Hey, it doesn't mean he's the starter right now. It's just kind of where we're at right now today, and it's something that we'll be evaluating constantly." Um, but so AJ Duffy, who I think many would expect to win that job at San Diego State. Uh, Interesting note that I found in this article: wide receiver Nate Bennett, this transfer from Portland State, was heavily involved in the passing game, either catching wide receiver screens or deep passes. The 6'3" wide receiver made several back shoulder fade receptions. Again, I think we've mentioned this before. The outside receivers are kind of the studs for Sean Lewis, and Nate Bennett's kind of looking like one of those outside guys early on in spring practice. Another transfer was talked about, UCLA transfer, wide receiver Jerry McClure. They kind of said he struggled in the press coverage in the 11 on 11 drills, but did break free behind the defense for a big play one time. So, again, not as much praise there for McClure, but Nate Bennett kind of looks like the early guy to kind of pay attention to here for San Diego State. Tight end, USC transfer tight end Jude Wolf made a great catch and run off a screen pass, and that followed that up by catching a quick pass off a fake screen the very next play. So, tight end Jude Wolf is there. Tight end transfer Michael Harrison Jr., he's not there for spring practice, right? So we don't really know how they're going to utilize him. He's size-wise, to me, he's more like a big receiver than he is a tight end.
Yep.
So kind of be interesting to kind of see how he gets used there once he gets on campus. Like I mentioned, they kind of have a depth chart, but it's a very loose depth chart at this point. But for the sake of letting you know who it is, the first team was quarterback AJ Duffy, running back Keenan Christon, tight end Logan Tanner, who is a returner to San Diego State, wide receiver Nate Bennett, wide receiver Jashawn Polk, and wide receiver Balin Brooks. So Polk's got to be the slot receiver in that setup with Brooks and Nate Bennett, the two outside guys. The other thing to note is Lewis Brown was not, on that initial first team, so to speak, and he is there for spring practice. Lewis Brown, the fourth. So perhaps he's learning the playbook, trying to get more involved. It's going to be really interesting to kind of see how that wide receiver room shakes out, right? Because Nate Bennett's getting some early praise. We have high expectations for Lewis Brown. Jashawn Polk, he's familiar with that offense. He was with Sean Lewis at Kent State. So you got to think he has a leg up on that slot spot. And then Balin Brooks, a freshman last year, who under the old regime got some praise as a true freshman, right? Outside receiver. So it's going to be very interesting to kind of see how that wide receiver room shakes out there for San Diego State.
Plus, do they get a particular running back in the transfer portal?
Yeah, Marquez Cooper, right?
So yeah, we'll see what happens there. And I know you guys are wondering, and yes, San Diego State is on the Worker Bee series, or will be on the Worker Bee series. So we will get more information to you later.
Moving on to Georgia Southern, who is getting ready to start up practice. I listened to a podcast where they talked to new offensive coordinator Ryan Applin, and kind of there really wasn't a lot of. He didn't really give you any juicy tidbits or anything. They asked him about the quarterbacks, and he literally named every single quarterback on the roster. Said it'd be a wide open competition. He did talk a little bit more about J.C. French and Dexter Williams, the transfer from Indiana. More talked about their experience. They had, J.C. French has experience at Georgia Southern. Dexter Williams with his experience at Indiana, but he didn't really give he didn't give anything away, so to speak. But certainly, it's a battle to watch, particularly in between French and Williams. But who knows, right? Maybe somebody maybe there's a dark horse candidate that will arise from that quarterback competition, but definitely something we want to pay attention to this spring, kind of see who's going to be that quarterback this year for Georgia Southern. And the last bit of news, we're going to kind of move to Tulane. So there was an article that I read earlier today with Mekhi Hughes, man, and it was a great article. And probably the most interesting quote that I saw was, this is Mekhi Hughes. He says, "I'm going to try to reach Tyjae Spear." Talking about Tyjae Spear. Tyjae's 1,500 yards. He said that after the second practice. He said, "The whole running back room, we just want to eat. We're competing each and every day, staying in our playbook and our film, and just talking about how great the season is going to be. We're very excited." And then what really encouraged me, there were some great quotes coming from the new OC and the new head coach there. So offensive coordinator Joe Craddock, when asked about Mekhi Hughes, says he had a great year. The challenge for him is avoiding that sophomore slump. He has to put his head down and keep working, and he is doing a great job of that. Head coach John Summerall, when asked about Mekhi Hughes, said, "Our running back is going to get drafted this year. We want to be able to run the ball with physicality on our terms. I think he is going to have a big-time year once again. His work ethic is going to set him up for success. He is a fantastic worker and a great teammate." So
I think John Summerall needs to understand how the draft process works. You can't get drafted as a true sophomore.
Well, I don't think I think he's a redshirt sophomore.
Oh, he's a redshirt sophomore.
He missed the 2022 year because he tore his ACL.
That's right.
He tore his ACL. So he is 3 years removed.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's a redshirt sophomore. But man, that is some high praise, right? Love to see that from Mekhi Hughes. Praise from both the OC and the head coach. Love to see that, man.
Yes.
Staying in Tulane, a little more disappointing news. I hadn't seen this until I read this article. But transfer quarterback Ty Thompson that came over from Oregon, he will have to wait at least a week to fully join Tulane's quarterback competition. He sat out the 11-on-11 workouts on the opening day of spring practice with a foot injury. That foot injury was diagnosed earlier in the year, but it was encouraging, they say, because he was able to throw during 1-on-1 and 7-on-7 drills because there's no pass rush. He was just wearing tennis shoes, not cleats. They do expect Ty Thompson to be available no later than after they return from spring break, which will be after the first 6 practices there. They described his foot issue was a 5th metatarsal issue that predated his arrival to Tulane. So, according to Thompson, like, he had this discomfort at Oregon. He didn't want to say anything about it. He ignored it, played through the pain at Oregon. He got to Tulane, said something about it. They did a scan. They found the injury on his foot. And so they said, hey, the options are continue to play through the pain, or let's do something about it now and get it fixed and make sure you're good for the fall. And so that's kind of what they decided to do there. So hopefully, we'll hear some more about Ty Thompson as the spring moves on for Tulane. But with Ty Thompson out, Kai Horton has kind of been getting the first team reps there. And I did find this one quote in the article kind of interesting. They said Horton found USC transfer wideout Mario Williams early and often, with Williams' speed, confidence, and route running ability standing out from the start. So we've talked about this before. The slot wide receiver is kind of the one to target for John Summerall, and that's certainly no doubt that's going to be Mario Williams. It's kind of good to see that he's already kind of getting recognized for his abilities there at Tulane.
All right, and then we got two G5 spring games that will be broadcasted on ESPN Plus in April. So we got newly minted G5 team Kennesaw State, April 19th at 7 p.m., and then Georgia Southern, April 20th at noon. So if you want to get a sneak peek at either of those teams or Kennesaw State, especially since they're new, they will be April 19th and 20th. Spring practice dates. So we've got Air Force spring game coming up, or that already happened on
This
March
past
12th.
weekend, yeah.
Then we've got App State spring game coming up on the 23rd. ULM's practice started March 11th, as well as Western Kentucky. On the 12th, we had a slew of teams that had started their spring practice. We've got Florida Atlantic, Florida International, Louisiana, Miami of Ohio, Nevada, Old Dominion, Temple, San Diego State, Tulane. On the 13th, Arkansas State started. On the tomorrow, we'll actually, or when this releases and you're listening to it, if you're listening to it on the 19th, tomorrow we will have Charlotte, East Carolina, Memphis, Troy, Utah State, and Georgia State starting. And then on the 21st, we have James Madison, South Alabama, and Texas State starting practice.
So yeah, I mean, like I feel like the next 2 weeks is kind of the bulk of teams starting practice, and then they go to mid-April. I think the 13th and 20th is the majority of the spring games. The two you mentioned, I think, are the last two really in March, Air Force and App State, and then we got I think 3 or so April 6th, and then the 13th, 20th, 27th. Man, they're all kind of bunched up there in terms of spring games. All right, so I guess our main topic this week, we recently completed a mock draft, a G5 only mock draft. I guess we finished it last weekend, right? We started it on Saturday, and I don't know, we finished Monday maybe.
Yeah, it didn't take very long.
We only did 15 rounds. 12 teams. Shout out to the folks that helped us with that. Andrew Katz, Brock, CFF Jared, Clint Carlson, Steve Jackson, Rebel Way, Corey Cavender, PJ from Campus to Canton, Brett Pogney, and Dwight Peebles. Thanks to those guys for participating. So, for the next couple weeks, until we kind of finish this draft, we'll see how many rounds we get tonight. I think we're shooting for kind of go through the first 5 rounds, but we might kind of be going over this draft for the next week or two or so. And for those of you that are kind of checking in the first time, say a draft. What are you talking about? So talking about college fantasy football. It's it's not quite as big as NFL fantasy football, but it's growing, right? And it's a growing space, growing every day, and it's something that I think will only continue to get bigger. And so we try to highlight the G5 players that would be of interest to the folks that play in those G5 leagues or all in any league really. But for this draft, we only focused on the G5. The other thing I want to mention, so when I'm going to put the graphics up on the screen here, but you might notice, like, for instance, Chandler Morris got drafted, but if you're in the Fantrax system, he's going to show up under TCU. For our graphics, I photoshopped him in as a North Texas player. Matt Sluka over at UNLV doesn't exist in Fantrax. Yet we had to use a placeholder, but anytime we end up using placeholders, I have photoshopped those guys in. So don't get all excited and be like, oh, it looks like Matt Saluka's in Fantrax, because he's not. So we'll get started here with round number 1. So You want to kind of take it off there, Luke, or
Yeah, so we got we've got an audio medium here and then visual. So I'll do the best I can here with the talking. But we've got Ashton Genty goes 1, Byron Brown, Caden Salter, Torrey Horton at 4, Jalen Royals at 5, Jordan McLeod at 6, Jalen Rayner at 7, Pofili Ashlock at 8, Ricky White at 9, Joey Hobart at 10, Sean Atkins at 11, and Ismail Mahdi at 12. We've got 3 Texas State players in the first round. What do you think about that, Justice?
yeah, one thing I think I should have mentioned in the lead in is, so we told everybody 2 quarterbacks, um, 2 running backs, 3 receivers, 1 tight end, and then 3 flex, and then or 2 flex. I can't remember.
Two flex.
And then they have 5 positions to kind of do what they want with. So that's kind of the basis of the draft, so to speak. Yeah, I mean, wheels up for that Texas State offense, right? GJ Kinney there in year 1 really got it going. I am not shocked to see that there were, that Texas State kind of led the way in terms of players in our first round. I mean, the 101 is a no brainer, and I think it doesn't matter what format you're playing in. It's Ashton Jeanty, right? Some people talk about Ollie Gordon, but yeah, it's Ashton Jeanty. Given his not only his rushing ability, but his receiving and pass catching ability too. He's got to be the 101, right?
So I do want to kind of give a little nugget here for those that are listening live or listening the next day. I was told by somebody close to the program that they are looking for Genty to be that workhorse. Dunbar will get some play, but they're kind of looking at that like 10 to 12 touches a game. So we've kind of always had Ashton and George Halani splitting the work, and people really wanted to see Ashton really take that. I mean, pretty much what Ashton was at the beginning of the year last year before George came back there late October or so. But that's what I would assume that we are going to get.
I mean, I would say like I'm trying to think what maybe surprised me in this draft. I'd say the first 5 picks that was pretty chalk, right? I mean, those 5 guys are going in the top 2 rounds of a normal draft of all college football players. So, clearly they were going to be the top 5 guys here. It's kind of that next group kind of where you see things differ a little bit. Obviously McLeod recently transferred to Texas State, the reigning Sun Belt Player of the Year, had a great year for JMU. He kind of gets the reins of that high octane offense there at Texas State. So certainly understand why he was drafted where he was. Jalen Rayner, a nice looking young quarterback, athletic quarterback for Arkansas State. I think when we get to that group of receivers there, Ashlock, Ricky White, Hobart, and Atkins, I just feel like that group's got that those 4 guys is kind of like personal preference.
Yeah.
Because I've seen it. I just think we could do this draft 10 more times, and it could be a different. Those guys could go in any kind of order. I personally, I'm a big Pofeli Ashlock guy. I just feel like that offense, year 3 under that run and shoot there under Timmy Chang, the addition of Dan Morrison to that staff. I think when I was listening to that Hawaii podcast earlier, he was talking about how, back in the day when they started the run and shoot, it was kind of really year 3 that when they started seeing the run and shoot pay dividends, right, in terms of production. And so we're kind of going into that year 3 now. And so, we've had really high hopes for Hawaii since they started that run and shoot the last 2 years. So, hopefully that they can kind of get that get the run and shoot from days of old back up and running there at Hawaii.
I was
Um,
actually kind of really surprised. Like you said, it's kind of your flavor that you want, but Sean Atkins going at pick 11. Honestly, it feels kind of like a steal because of just how many sheer plays that USF runs that he's going to get there by volume, I think.
yeah, yeah,
So again,
yeah.
can't it's the first round. You can't win your league uh in the first round of picks, but you can sure lose it. And
All solid
I'm
picks right here.
yeah. Yep. Let's look at round 2. So this was a snake draft. So then
We probably should mention we included Oregon State and Washington State in this draft. Luke and I have had this conversation a couple times, but
yeah.
Oregon State and Washington State, if you go ask them, I'm sure they don't consider themselves the G5, but I mean, I feel like for all intents and purposes, that's what they really are now. They're kind of in no man's land, and unless they get added by one of those the Power Four conferences, I mean, I feel like they're the G5 is where they're destined, right? So we did include them in this draft.
Yep. And then we also it was UMass and I feel like there's one other team.
UConn, Connecticut.
UConn.
Yep.
So, anyways, so snake draft, we got PJ starts off with Damian Martinez. Then we've got Quentin Cooley, Micaiah Hughes, Malik Sherrod, Mario Anderson, Malachi Nelson, Jalen White, Noah Smith, Jalen Buckley, Ontario Brown, Kieran Adams, and Jamal Pritchett. What kind of stands out to you, or what do you really want to talk about here in the second round, Justice?
It seemed kind of early for Malachi Nelson to me. He's not a runner, so he doesn't add. I don't know that he adds a whole lot there in terms of being able to, for scoring purposes for fantasy. But that one surprised me a little bit. I think Noah Smith was a steal when you drafted him and at the 8th there.
Yeah, so I
running
when
backs
I
kind of running backs dried up quick.
when I actually started, like I was like, okay, I'll just kind of do like I thought about doing quarterback my first pick, but I was like, it's a mock draft. I kind of want to see what happens. And I went, as you will see, I think wide receiver, maybe with mine. And I actually still kind of liked how my team worked out because I was like, okay, if again, running backs in general in all of college football, pretty deep. But then when you get into the G5, it's not as deep. But there's still some guys in there that you can grab and that I really like there. And there's just a whole bunch of wide receivers in the G5.
I think if I had to do this over, I probably would have taken Hughes. If I had to do it over today, and instead of taking Ashlock, I probably would have taken Hughes. It's probably what I would have done differently. But that's kind of the way it worked out. When initially, my initial thoughts going into this draft were, wide receiver might not be so deep. But I will say after doing the draft, I feel like wide receiver was deeper on the G5 than quarterback and running back. So I think I would have, which is kind of opposite the way I feel generally about, when you're looking at all the teams. I feel like
Yep.
the running backs really deep when you're including all college football teams. And so that's kind of a difference I saw between the G5 and including all the teams. So I think I would have taken Micaiah Hughes there instead of Pafole Ashlock, but
I think it was probably a little bit early for Malik Sherrod.
I just think like the running backs dried up so quick, man.
Yeah.
Sherrod, Anderson, Jalen White, Ontario, Kieran Adams.
I mean, also we started the draft before our Liberty interview hit, and Quentin Cooley went at overall number 14. I wonder if we redo this, if he goes that high based off the information that we got, that, we don't want to use him as much as we did last year.
Yeah, and I don't, I guess like I always kind of considered that before we had talked to John about the running back room there at Liberty, because you look at Chadwell's history, right? Chadwell's history with the Coastal Carolina, it's a shared backfield. It's not to say that guys aren't productive, but you're not seeing, generally speaking, you're not seeing someone put up 1,400 yards and 15 touchdowns. You're not seeing one running back do that in that offense, right? And I think people people forgot how banged up that room was last year, right? Von Blue got hurt early in the season, didn't come back till the very end. Billy Lucas got hurt, and so I feel like a lot of games, Quentin Cooley was the only option, right?
And I don't remember if it got mentioned in the interview, but if not, tidbit again is Von Blue has a shoulder injury.
He did mention that he got injured again in the spring. Yeah, so, John did mention that.
Okay.
So yeah, I think, I guess it just, but I've seen a lot of comments from people after watching the episode with Liberty. I've seen a lot of comments, people saying where like, oh, well, maybe our expectations for Quentin Cooley should be adjusted some. And I guess I just didn't realize that people weren't already thinking that. But yeah, so.
And then Jalen Buckley, pick 9 in the second round based off that offense. Maybe a little high, but like you said, running back started going off the board, and who am I going to take? Maybe that's more of a panic pick of, hey, I want somebody. But, Dwight got Ontario Brown 1 pick later, so that's a good pick. And then something people might not realize is K'Ron Adams. He actually declared for the NFL draft, but then through the collective, they brought him back. So I don't know, maybe if he didn't get the draft grade that he was expecting, and if that's the case, I don't know why you declare for the draft or whatnot. But yeah, he will be back at UMass thanks to the collective there. So,
and one thing I didn't realize until a day or two ago, looking at that last pick with Jamal Pritchett, is Devin Voisin's back. I had totally forgot about Devin Voisin, and I can't remember he even got drafted in this draft. He tore his ACL last year, but he is back this year. So it'd be interesting to kind of see how that wide receiver room plays out for South Alabama.
All right. Anything else we want to talk about here? We'll go into the third round. We got Rock Taylor, Stephen McBride, Ricky Hunt, Seth Hennigan, Devin Dampier, Derwin Burgess, Harold Fannin, tight end off the board. Then Harrison Whaley, Braden Shager, Kyle Williams, Caden Robinson, and Easton Messer. What pops out to you here?
Dampier. Like I didn't expect him to go this early. So that one's not saying like the upside isn't there, because it's Bronco Mendenhall offense. Dampier is an athletic running quarterback. He
feel
could
personally attacked.
Well, no. I mean, I wanted Dampier too. Don't get me wrong. Like I fully intended to draft him. I just didn't think he would go this high.
So I did say I started off wide receiver. Apparently it's wide receiver, quarterback. Because that second pick, so the first pick I thought about taking a quarterback and then lean into the wide receiver. And then I'm like, okay, well, I want to get a quarterback. And they were starting, the mobile quarterbacks were starting to kind of go. And I wanted a mobile quarterback. And Dampier, not that he's more the upside pick. So I went swinging for the fences with the first pick and hopefully we can get something there. That was and how I was kind of seeing it was like just kind of how things are going in the draft. I was like, well, if I were to try to win this, I'm going to have to do something different. And that was kind of my different pick, that like, hey, this has got to hit. Because if I don't, only one team wins at the end of the year. So this might be that thing that helps me.
A couple of guys that I think fell further than they probably should have. One was Harrison Whaley, the other Caden Robinson. Um, you know, I guess I'm not like I don't know. I personally would not take Ricky Hunt over Harrison Whaley. I just feel like Whaley's a much safer option, right? Wyoming, what Wyoming's going to want to do. They're going to want to run the ball and play good defense, and Whaley's certainly the centerpiece of that offense, especially they're breaking in a new quarterback this year. Ricky Hunt, don't get me wrong, had a great bowl game, right? But that was one game. I think you talked to the beat writer there at Ohio, right? And
Yep.
specifically about Ricky.
Yep, sure did. Said, I was just like, hey, was Ricky at all hurt during the year, and that's why we didn't see him until the bowl, or what was going on? It's like, no, he was healthy. He's just not as good as say Bangura. So that's why he didn't bust onto the scene. So take that with what you will. He's no say Bangura, but
He had a phenomenal bowl game for Ohio, and I think it's a safe assumption to assume he's going to be that starting running back for them. I just my
that O
personal take,
line will look a lot different.
yeah, for me and new quarterback. So for me personally, like I'd rather have Whaley. Just feels like a much safer option there. Um,
Uh,
and then
something I liked here was Rock Taylor. Um, Looking at all the different guys, we got Seth Hennigan going and Rock Taylor, and my affinity for Memphis. I think you took Mario in the second round, so
I did.
we've got Memphis guys going here in the second and third round. So offenses that it looks like if you were to kind of gauge how the space or other people are viewing Texas State and Memphis and Hawaii, because we got
And Hawaii, we've got now three Hawaii with Ashlock, McBride, and Shager.
so yeah. Anything else that you want to talk about here?
The Kyle Williams one kind of surprises me a little bit, just because I feel like that offense is traditionally you want to target the slot guys, and I don't think Kyle Williams is an outside guy. He did have some productive games last year, in particular when Lincoln Victor was out. That one's a little surprising, and then the Easton Messer pick. I I don't know that I'm buying the hype on Easton Messer. I kind of feel like I'd rather have Dalvin Smith. Um, Dalvin Smith looked phenomenal in that bowl game. Um, at least today, anyway, Dalvin Smith has tight end eligibility. And But still, I think like regardless, I don't know that it's a foregone conclusion that Easton Messer is the wide receiver one in that offense. I think it could be Dalvin Smith. So
And
that
honestly, how that Western Kentucky offense looked like last year at times, it I don't know how much for fantasy wise that you want a part of it, but they are a part of the G5 Worker Bee series, so we'll find out what we need to know at a later date.
Harold Fannin, definitely the top two true tight end for the G5 for sure. I mean, you got guys like Holden Willis at Middle Tennessee and Dalvin Smith who currently have tight end eligibility, but from a true tight end standpoint, Harold Fannin, yeah, in my
That was kind of
opinion,
an interesting
definitely
pick.
the top tight end off the board.
So then Katz has how he starts as Jalen Rayner, then Malachi Nelson, and then Harold Fannin. So gets his two quarterbacks out of the way, and then gets the top tight end.
Yeah, yeah.
So round 4, we've got Chandler Morris, Dean Connors, Matt Sluka, Joey Aguilar, Bert Emanuel, Mikey Keene, DeCorian Clark, Cole Wilson, Justin Marshall, Devin McCohen, Kentrell Bullock, and Javius Bond. Thoughts here in the 4th round?
It's a steal for Dean Connors. It feels like he feels like a steal there.
I'm still very bitter about our draft with CFF's list and he just did not produce that week. So upset about that. All right, go on.
A couple, like, I think a lot of people forget about DeCorian Clark, right?
Yep.
Because he was injured pretty much all of last year, right? They do have to break in a new quarterback there at UTSA, but I think a lot of people forget about DeCorian Clark. So good on Jared drafting him. Cole Wilson, another Texas State guy, gets taken, right?
So that's four. That's
Yeah.
4 Texas State guys in the first 4 rounds, 3 in the first round.
Matt Sluka, a little interesting. Just looking at the quarterbacks taken, I think I'd rather have Aguilar, at least today. There's a little bit of risk there with Sluka. I think if he's going to be the starting quarterback, and we know that for 100%, then yeah, it's probably appropriate where he was taken, right?
And I don't know if we've talked about it here, but he's not on campus currently.
He is not. That's right. He is not in spring. I think we did mention that.
Okay.
He is not. He is not there
Maybe we
for
talked
the
about it last
spring.
week.
I think we did talk about it last week. But interesting thing to note is who drafted him? The UNLV guy with the insider information, Rebel Way. So I think he clearly he believes and has kind of, I guess, been told or heard that Saluka is going to be the starter there. So take
Then
that for what it's worth.
We talked about it earlier. Joey Aguilar is kind of Kirk Cousins, is that not sexy guy that's up there on all of the stats, and he just provides and getting. I'd have to go back to see if for Brett this is his first. He did Ricky White, Malik Sherrod, Braden Shager. So Shager and Joey together. So you kind of got I mean, that's a pretty stable quarterback room, I think. Shager, you probably just don't want to watch the games, but hopefully there's a big breakout this year.
Again, year 3, right? Year 3. Hopefully
Yeah.
that's the magic number for, the magic year for Hawaii. My pick, Bert Emanuel Jr., Central Michigan. Jace Bauer's gone over to Sam Houston State, and Sam Houston, I guess, they dropped the state. But anyway, Emmanuel kind of feels like a very boomer bust prospect this year, right? Because of his legs. If he can rush, if he can put up the rushing stats he did 2 years ago, it's going to be worth this pick. But he didn't get a lot of playing time last year. I'm not sure if that was injuries or what was going on there. It was mostly Jace Bauer. Ultimate boom bust pick there at Bert Emanuel. You got to steal with Cole Wilson. I also, late here in the 4th round.
That's my QB3. That feels pretty good. Like if you can get that as your, or not QB, wide receiver 3. If that can be your production at wide receiver 3, I feel pretty good about that.
Justin Marshall, that seems a little early to me. I think people are forgetting the Avery Morrow is back. And so he's still there. You had the other true freshman running back, Damian Henderson. So I'm just not. I know Marshall kind of was the guy at the end of the year, but I'm just not sold that he's going to be the RB1 for Colorado State at this point.
So I do want to share. I did again. We'll talk to them in the Worker Bee series, and hopefully this will have a little bit more clarity. But I did ask an insider about that running back room. So I just asked, what are the thoughts on that running back room? I was told it's fascinating. There are too many bodies right now who want the ball. So I was like, is there anybody that you think is transferring out? And what I got was, it's impossible to guess who it could be right now. Guys can play their way in or out of reps in the spring. But yeah, I'm not going to be shocked to see some changes post spring. So that when that second transfer portal opens up, you might see some different bodies come and go. I would say probably more go than come. And also asked, do you have an idea based off of, the production of last year and there was no sense of knowing who that is. So that was really telling because usually, if you perform well last year or whatnot, it's like, okay, you get the first bat, and it doesn't feel like that is the sentiment right now for Colorado State.
The other pick I want to talk about was the Javius Bond pick. The running back room in East Carolina is extremely crowded, but Bond, brings something different than all those other running backs. So you got to assume like his role at least would be safe. He's a smaller guy. He's a speed guy. Um, so yeah, I mean, I just thought that was an interesting pick here in the fourth round, just because of the crowdedness of the room. I think Bond could have probably been drafted a little bit later, but if you like the guy, go get your guy, right?
Yeah, a lot of people here on Kendrick Bullock, 11th pick here in the fourth round, so pick 47. Um, I feel like out of all of the running backs that got soaked up, that's a pretty good spot for Bullock.
Yeah,
Kind of where he went. Looking back at it, maybe that would have been a good pick for me to get me a running back, as everything's been kind of soaked up, and I'm still sitting at no running backs.
yeah. All right. We'll move on to round 5, and it'll be the final round we'll talk about tonight.
So yeah, like we did do 15 rounds. So we will talk about the next 5 rounds next time. But yeah, so rounding out tonight's episode, we've got Kanye Roberts, Io Adehi, Dalvin Smith, Terrion Stewart, Marion Lukes, Micah Davis, Sean Dollars, Demir Blankenship, Justin Ross Simmons, Mario Williams, Marquise Crosby, and Holden Willis. What sticks out to you here, Justice, in the 5th round?
I like the Kanye Roberts pick. I could see him being 1,000-yard back for App State this year with Nate Noel going off to the transfer portal. Um, the the Ayo Adeyi, I just feel like it's kind of between him and George Pettaway. Looks like a split room. Not to say that they both can't be productive, as we've talked about the offense, the new offense there for James Madison, and how is it Bob Chesney, right? That's the head coach. Um, they prefer a mobile quarterback, but they bring in Dylan Morris from Washington, who's not a mobile quarterback. Saluka's been the quarterback the last few years, and he's been like, 1,200, 1,300 yards a season. Dylan Morris is not going to run like that. And so maybe they're going to use the two running backs in Pettaway and Adeyi more so, and they're going to get that that production. Um, you know, Mario Williams, just based on the news I just read, that seems like a steal, right? At running back. Sorry, at receiver. Another Memphis guy gone with Demir Blankenship.
Yep.
The is this, now I'm thinking about it. Was Sean Dollars an actual pick, or was that a placeholder?
I feel like it was an actual pick.
I'm trying to think. I thought they had someone transfer in, but maybe not. Marion Lukes. I didn't know this at the time, but I heard Jared talk about it this week, I believe, on his Chasing the Natty podcast. And I don't know if you knew this when you drafted him, but that I guess Marion Lukes kind of had a big finish there towards the end of the year. Did that something that kind of weighed on your mind?
Yeah, because at that point, running backs were kind of drying up. I was like, what can I do here? And then that's when I was like, okay, what running backs can I get? I did look at tight end, possibly. But then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go running back. And that's what I looked at, was there at the end. And we get the quarterback comes out, and then you got a running quarterback there. But he's still able to produce really well. So, yeah, that definitely was a big part of why I went there.
Clint taking a stab on a Louisiana Tech running back. I think I just don't know it's going to be Crosby. It could be Keith Willis, the freshman from a year ago. Um, both Holden Willis and Dalvin Smith both kind of have that tight end eligibility currently. But I'm of the opinion that they're probably not going to hold it. By the time the season starts. Holden Willis is listed as a receiver on the Middle Tennessee roster. The same with Dalvin Smith, listed as a receiver. That was the same for Smith last year. Smith played no inline snaps this past year. Willis played minimal. I don't know. I want to say it was like 15 inline snaps. But I'd be surprised if they both hold that tight end eligibility throughout the season. So I understand the upside here, right? There certainly is a huge upside to take these guys down, but I'd be concerned that you're going to be able to use them as a tight end when the year starts.
I'm on mute. And I'm looking at trying to find a running back who's transferred into Nevada, and I do not see one.
Okay, so yeah, maybe Sean Dollars was Andrew's pick there. They bring in the Chuba Purdy. They're at quarterback, so maybe the offense will be improved this year. To me, the steals of this round were probably Roberts, Lukes, and Mario Williams.
We'll see how Middle Tennessee State fares this year, but Holden Willis, if he's able to have tight end eligibility, he's kind of a sneaky guy. Just don't know how that offense will look. Obviously, Dalvin Smith will be a pretty darn good pick there. Then Micah Davis, Jared got him. He could be that, Utah State's able to usually have two wide receivers there. So
it'd be interesting to see if they move Micah Davis into the slot, which was where Terrell Vaughn played, or if they leave him on the outside with Royals. I think Davis can play either position. Be kind of interesting to see what they do with Davis in the spring. Do they move him to that slot spot, or do they leave him on the outside?
You know what? We should ask somebody.
Yes.
And we will. And we'll bring that to you guys right here on the G5 Hive. But that wraps it up for our first 5. We'll do rounds 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 next Monday about the same time, depending on how quickly I'm able to get my kids down to bed. That's what it all based off of. We were a little bit later tonight, but you can thank Daylight Savings Time for that. So thank you. Thank you, Daylight Savings Time. But yeah.
Like I said, we got another interview this week with the team coming up, and there will not be an episode of the Worker Bee series released this Friday, but it will be on the 29th. And then kind of after that, man, it's going to, things are going to get real hectic real fast for us. So thanks everyone for the support. Please rate, review, subscribe. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. Please like the video. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please, give us those 5-star reviews. We appreciate that. We thank everyone for their support. And hopefully, we're bringing you information you guys want to hear. Like Luke said, if you have questions you want us to ask, shoot us a DM. We'll certainly try to ask those questions when we interview those team representatives. So, yeah, thanks.
And make sure that we're, share them, like them, because we haven't got all of the teams yet, but if there is kind of the market for it, that's what we need to show. So keep getting people to view it, share it, like it, help us grow and help us add some value to the football space, real football, fantasy football, whatever, you want it to be. Help us grow, help it grow. But yeah, thank you guys, and we'll see you next week.
Hallelujah!